First and foremost, I would like to thank everyone for showing up today. Your participation in the development of this bill is greatly needed and appreciated. Through engaging the public, good legislation is made, and not only for such a controversial bill such as marijuana, but for small bills, especially as Harrisburg is moving forward with making amendments to our strong plan. We need to see all types of citizen participation. So one of our goals for City Council is to really do as we can to provide the platform to make sure we're engaging all areas of the community to participate in the process. So one of our goals with this meeting was connecting with HAC to use a different facility to host the meeting. So we really would appreciate feedback in terms of how do you guys feel about us taking city council meetings on the road to kind of be where you are, because we want to kind of make the government process as easy as possible to participate in. And through your input, we can get a lot of things done. So I appreciate you guys for taking the initial steps to be involved to come out here today. Thank you. So as everyone knows, we're going to be discussing Bill 4 of 2016. It's a bill that's discussing reducing the penalties associated with small amounts of marijuana. Kind of how everything is going to be laid out. I set a small agenda. I'm going to do an introduction, and then I'm going to let you guys know the format of the meeting. I'm going to do an overview of the current law, overview of the proposed bill, and then I'm going to have a slide that basically is going to be a slide full of questions where it kind of gets your minds thinking of different ways you guys can provide input into this bill. There's a lot of key aspects that has to do with marijuana across the nation, whether for recreational use, medical use. As the city, we're limited in what we can do. So I kind of want to make sure everyone in the room is focused on the bill at hand, so we can focus on what we can do. There's a lot of things, a lot of wishes that people would like us to do, but we do not have that power. So I'm really going to hone in on people really focusing on what we have the ability to change, because that's what we can discuss here today. So basically the format for the committee meeting is I'm going to go over those topics, and then from there, and that's only going to last at most 10 minutes because we're looking for public input. We're not going to sit here and talk to you guys about it. We want to get your input. But one thing I will ask in exchange is, because we have such a large crowd and we probably have more people coming in, I'm going to ask you guys to kind of keep your questions or comments limited to 3 minutes. I know a lot of questions and comments are associated with stories, so if we can kind of eliminate some of the stories and get right down to the core concept of what you're trying to get across or what needs to be improved with this bill, I would really appreciate it. If I feel like you're going over a little 3 minutes, I may try to cut you off, and I'm not doing that to be rude, but I'm trying to respect everyone's time inside the room to make sure everyone has a chance to participate. So that's how that format is going to be. And some questions we have members of council here, we have the DA here, we have the mayor here, the chief here. Some questions we will be able to directly answer right here on the spot. Some questions we will have to take notes and kind of come back to you guys for some more for that answer. And we will have another public session, and that's going to be held March 24th at 5:30 at the Public Works Facility on Paxton Street. And within the meantime, you guys can feel free to send us emails. The copy of the legislation is on our website. So we're doing all we can to provide the avenue for people to participate inside this process. Quick introduction of the people up front. I'm going to start to the far left. We have Mr. Brandon Flood. He represents the executive director for the Pennsylvania Black Caucus. We have Councilman Westburn Majors. He's our chair of Public Works. We have Councilwoman Destiny Hodges, which is chair of our Parks and Recs Committee. We have Council President Wanda Williams. She chairs the Administration Committee. We have world-renowned Chief Carter. Everyone knows what he does. And then we have Mayor Packenfoos, and we have DA Ed Marsico with us today. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today to be involved inside this committee meeting. Your time and your expertise is greatly appreciated. So moving along, the current protocol of the law, and I can't really see. Currently, if you're charged with small amounts of marijuana, it's considered an ungraded misdemeanor. And kind of the maximum penalties for violating this law is it could be up to 30 days in prison or a $500 fine. A lot of times those situations don't happen. Usually people end up working out a deal with the DA office where people either enroll into an ARD program, or a lot of different circumstances may arise depending on the situation and the charge. But these are the maximum penalties that could happen. And one of the major penalties that does happen in association with a small possession of marijuana is the Motor Vehicles Act. I believe police officers are required to report to PennDOT anytime they charge anyone with this charge of small amounts of marijuana. And for the first offense, it's 6 months of your license suspended, 1 year for the second offense, and 2 years for the third and any subsequent offenses. And that's actually a key point of this legislation, and one thing that we have to, we as council members have to reach out to the state and PennDOT to see how, even if we were to pass this legislation and we were issuing out, summary citations, I still think by law we may be required to report that to PennDOT. So that is an aspect of the does anyone say?
Correct.
That's correct. That's correct. Well, we could talk. We'll comment on or talk about that as well. But that's a key thing that I kind of want to point out, because I want the public to be fully aware of the ramifications. I don't want to paint a picture where everyone thinks, hey, everything is good, I'm just going to get the citation, I'm going to move on with life, and then something else comes and pin you in the back. So I'm all about transparency and letting you guys know exactly what's going on. So currently, I believe that's the way it stands. So we'll have further conversations with the different panel members up here to see if they have a different perspective on it. The overview of Bill 4 2016. Basically what I want to do is I want to define hello? I want to define the key definitions of what is considered small amounts. So small amounts means 30 grams or less of marijuana, or 8 grams or less of hash, as is set forth by that PA code. And I wanted to define what possession means. Possession means actual physical custody of the ability to exercise control over or have access to. This is limited for the sole purpose of one's own personal use and does not include possession with the intent to deliver, distribute, transfer, or sell. So that's clear as day. I want to make sure people are aware that if the police officers kind of feel like you have an intent to deliver, distribute, transfer, or sell, that you can still be charged. So this bill only addresses marijuana for personal use. And under the proposed bill, violators will receive a non-traffic citation. The penalties for the first offense is $100. Penalties for the second offense is $200. And third offense under the proposed legislation right now is you will basically be charged the way the law is set currently. And then I put in the section of how people who are children who are under the age of 18, minors, would be charged within the proposed bill. The way it's laid out, they were temporarily detained a minor, advise parent or guardian that the minor was found with possession of marijuana, issue a copy of the citation to the parent, and provide parent or guardian with contact information for a local agency where substance abuse, education, and treatment programs are available. And one of the key aspects that I'm trying to look at with this legislation is looking for a way that we can have a stronger referral program for youth that are under 18, and not necessarily for drug abuse, but it's for basically letting them know that if you continue to go down this path of breaking the law, whatever law it may be, that it can have horrible effects on your life. So whether if it's whether they need to be assessed for whether it's drug abuse or just not being a good child. I think if we're able to catch them violating this law and are able to push them and guide them in the right direction, I think it'd be very, very helpful. And so this is how it's laid out right now. I'm trying to talk to different entities in terms of how we can accomplish what I was just talking about. I've been reaching out to Dauphin County to see through their Health and Human Services what services that may be useful when executing this bill. So the last things are the key discussion topics. So I just picked random questions that kind of circulate through your minds of the different things that we can talk here about. Basically, are you for or against this proposed legislation? Some people may like the way everything is laid out and they think it's a good legislation. You can just clearly say that. If you are, say why. If you're not, say why. How would you make this legislation better? I really want this to be a working session. So rather than saying that you dislike it, help us come up with suggestions to make it better. So we can incorporate that and take that back to the drawing table and say, all right, we heard from the public, this is what they like, this is what they dislike, this were some of the suggestions. At the end of the day, we are elected to the council, but we're not God, so we can't come up with the ideas ourselves. So that's why it's important to have public input to kind of make this legislation as strong as it can be. Other kind of key questions you guys can ask is, how do you feel about the fine structure? How do you feel about the 3 strikes provisions? And how do we handle minors in violation of this legislation? So those are just all, there could be more, questions that may have generated just from reviewing the legislation or the bill that you have in front of you. But like I said, I do, before I open up to public comment, I'm gonna allow anyone up front if they wanna comment before we open it up to comment. But I do want the conversation to be focused on the things that we can change. Some things we do not have the power to change. Like we do not have the power to legalize marijuana. So it's not gonna be really beneficial to this conversation here today to talk about legalizing marijuana. So if you guys can kind of focus on to work inside a box that we are put in by the state, that would be very, very beneficial in terms of time, in terms of actually accomplishing something that can be done here in Harrisburg. So that's all I'm going to say for today. I'm kind of going to moderate things and be around, helping people out. But I'm going to open up the floor to anyone on the panel if they want to comment on anything before we open up to public comment.
Well, to kind of piggyback on what you had alluded to relative to, so what was mentioned earlier about the suspension of licenses, driver's licenses, whether that would apply to this ordinance. I did see that question was posed at the initial city council meeting, so we did confer with our legal counsel, with the House of Representatives, and what we were told, Barbara Lane, who's works in our Legislative Reference Bureau, the way that the current statute reads, it says any offense and also non-traffic offenses as well. So it's important to keep in mind that that would apply to this ordinance and currently does apply to the ordinance in Philadelphia as well as Pittsburgh. So I know one of the big things is not to have some kind of deterrent mechanism in place. Certainly if folks value their driver's licenses, they may think twice before lighting up. So just wanted to kind of clarify that.
Brandon, is Philadelphia reporting now? Do you know? Is Philadelphia reporting to PennDOT their citations?
Well, my conversation with Derek Riker, he's with the Philadelphia's District Attorney's Office. From what I was told is that they do, and that was my last correspondence with Derek. But certainly I can double check, but that was his response.
All right. Any more comments for
I just want to give a little overview, sort of following up on what was said earlier on what currently happens under current law. Under current law, possession of a small amount of marijuana is an ungraded misdemeanor with a maximum of 30 days in jail. So that is a lesser offense than a lot of our summary offenses. Disorderly conduct, things like that carry actually a 90-day maximum jail sentence. So Pennsylvania statute on possession of a small amount of marijuana was decriminalized probably about 40 years ago down to the level where it's the 30-day maximum. With that said, anyone with a first offense, possession of a small amount of marijuana charge would be eligible for a diversionary program, like Quinetta said, like ARD, which is a program for first offenders. It's exceedingly rare that anyone goes to prison for any type of just a possession of a small amount case, even if it's your fourth, fifth, or sixth case, unless you're doing some other things along with it, marijuana normally ends up, possession of a small amount of marijuana is normally going to end up with just a fine and up to 30 days of probation. But as was noted by both Brandon and Cornelius, the PennDOT penalty is something that's usually of concern to someone charged with possession of a small amount of marijuana because of the loss of driver's license. That's normally where we see the concern on behalf of the defense in these cases and the negotiations in a plea agreement. Yes?
How many people did you arrest in this county last year for a small amount of possession?
I don't have the stats for the county, but I have the stats. The mayor was kind enough to provide me with the stats for the last 3 years for the city. There was, and it's a small font and my eyes aren't that good, 23 in 2013 for just a solo charge of possession of a small amount of marijuana. 23 in 2013, 17 in 2014, 20 in 2015. Now, additional charges in addition to that in 2013, 368, 2014, 461, and 2015, 389.
Plus 44.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
430.
So, it's interesting that just the possession of small amount charge is about 20 each of the last 3 years. That charge, in addition with others, you're looking at a couple hundred. So the stats are important, I think, as we look at that. You raise a good point with that.
Yeah, so kind of what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask if you guys want to line up here rather than, so you guys can, if people want to hear your questions as well, we'll have the microphone. And like I said, some questions we will be able to directly answer. Others we may have to take notes and come back to you with answers. And like I said, if you can limit your questions or your comments or your stories to about 3 minutes, I really appreciate it. It'll do well for time and allow others to participate as well.
Yes, my name is Brian Wade. I wanted to know the statistics that you just read, were they disaggregated based on ethnicity?
Yes.
Okay,
Would you like
can you
to know?
give us an overview of what that
Yeah.
disaggregation was?
Can you hear me or should I?
Yeah, use the mic.
Let me just-
So for 2015, last year, there were 433 total cases, of which 23 were just small position alone, and 410 were small possession and an additional charge. Of those, 338 were black, 57 were white, and 37 were Hispanic.
Wow.
So it is about, it's about 6-to-1 African American over white over the last 3 years.
The second part of the question would be then, what kind of outcome-based measurements will you use to determine how effective you are with respect to your legislation? And I know you won't have the outcome-based measurements as a part of your legislation, but are you looking to put an outcome-based measure in place to determine how effective you are in terms of what you're trying to do?
I'll just say we are planning to put a very close reporting measure back to City Council from the police department so we can monitor what the results of this are over the course of the next year. And that would be part of a continuing public conversation that would take place even after the bill were to go into effect. I don't, obviously that's an alarming disparity.
I say so too.
No, absolutely. But a key component to this is making sure that we monitor the stats and compare them to what they were prior.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I want to follow up on that. I think you raised a really good point with that. Secretary Wetzel, who's the Secretary of Department of Corrections, stopped me yesterday, and he'd been reading about this, and he has an interest if this is implemented. He'd like to partner with the city, the DA's office, and perhaps a school whether Penn State, Harrisburg, or at a university, to do exactly that, to see, because I think that's very important.
Right. My name is Les Stark. I'm the executive director of the Keystone Cannabis Coalition. I spoke at the City Council meeting on February 11th and outlined my organization's support of the direction that Harrisburg wants to go in, while expressing the opinion that the escalating fines are excessive, and we oppose the third strike provision. I would like to add that we think that there should be a distinction made between simple possession of cannabis and the smoking of cannabis in the public spaces. This is the approach taken by Philadelphia. A $100 fine for smoking cannabis in the public spaces is not excessive. We don't want people walking around Harrisburg smoking joints. It should be clear that this behavior is discouraged. A $100 fine is definitely a deterrent. For simple possession, however, $100 is excessive. So we encourage you to make a clear distinction between the two offenses in recognition that simply having less than an ounce is not as bad as smoking it around people who want nothing to do with it. While my organization supports decriminalization, we realize it's an imperfect solution. There's no legal method of distribution, meaning that distribution is unregulated. While most people agree that our society has too many regulations, this is one industry that seriously needs regulating. And while we often say that tax rates are too high, here's one industry that is getting off tax-free. It's not fair to tax-paying citizens to allow the distributors of marijuana to get out of paying their fair share of taxes and contributing to the greater public good. Harrisburg is desperately seeking additional revenue, and so is the state. A huge part of the solution is staring them in the face, but so far, the state has not decided to tap this revenue stream, and instead it spends vast sums of the public treasury in a fruitless and hopeless battle to enforce a law that the citizens in Pennsylvania do not want enforced. Ultimately, decriminalization is an impermanent fix, a temporary solution as Pennsylvania figures out a regulatory system that suits the needs of Pennsylvania citizens. In the meantime, it's a good middle ground that the majority of our citizens can agree on. I will add that Senate Bill 3, the bill allowing medical cannabis in Pennsylvania, will most likely be passed next week and signed into law shortly after. Not everyone who uses cannabis does so to get high and to listen to Pink Floyd. Many have serious medical necessity. The measure under consideration should give protection to those who are using cannabis for medical purposes. As you may be aware, the medical cannabis bill is deficient and does not allow for a whole plant smoked cannabis, even though that may be the most efficient form of delivery for many patients. This may be a temporary oversight that will be strengthened further down the road, but in the meantime, the measure you are considering will give them some protection from criminal prosecution. In fact, we would hope that someone using cannabis for medical purposes will not be prosecuted at all. As you know, 85% of Pennsylvanians support the use of medical cannabis. At the meeting 2 weeks from today, I will submit lengthier written testimony in support of my organization's position. Thanks.
My name is Tracy Croshower, and I am a medical cannabis activist. I wanted to thank Mayor Papadopoulos for his proposal to lessen penalties for possession of cannabis to a summary offense. I also want to thank the council for the willingness to confront this issue as well. Well, I am sure most of you know Governor Wolf has stated numerous times that he fully supports statewide decriminalization, and I think that it is noble that you are willing to take on this task. With Harrisburg undertaking a decriminalization ordinance, it shows other cities and counties within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that there is room for change, and most importantly, that it is time for this change. In Pennsylvania alone, there are 25,000 people per year arrested for possession, cultivation, and sales of cannabis. If we were to total this number out for 10 years, that equals out to 250,000 people arrested for cannabis alone. With Harrisburg having a population of roughly 49,528 citizens, imagine, if you could, If we stay on course with Pennsylvania arrest of 25,000 people per year, Pennsylvania would have arrested the whole entire city of Harrisburg in 2 years. Now, I understand that this is not the case because according to the Pennsylvania's Uniform Crime Report, that there were 299 arrests for possession of marijuana, of which 200 were African American or black. With a city makeup of 52% of your population being African American or black, we can clearly see the racial disparity.
Yes.
Pennsylvania, along with many other states, are in crisis mode right now because of heroin overdoses and deaths. If we take the cost per arrest, which is $1,266, multiply that by the 299 people, that comes out to a total of $378,534. Plus, to add on roughly court costs of $1,000 per case, it adds up to a total of $677,534 spent by the city alone on these arrests. Personally, I would like to see these funds spent trying to combat the heroin epidemic, whether it be through rehab or getting the violent offenders off of the streets. If I could, I would also like to remind you that not one person has ever died from a cannabis overdose.
All right now.
Furthermore, as a citizen of Pennsylvania, I would like to see an ordinance more in line with that of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Now is not the time to continue to divide Pennsylvania, even if merely by a zip code. I know the statewide decriminalization happens in fits and starts, and I believe that for all intents and purposes that you are trying to help citizens of Harrisburg. However, I feel that if you are sincere in this endeavor, that you will look to the cities as mentioned earlier and try to make yours as uniform as possible to those city ordinances. Again, I want to thank the mayor for his proposal, and I want to thank you for allowing me the time to speak.
If I could jump in real quick, I would point out one thing that I didn't mention during the overview of this legislation. The fines that will be assessed for violating this ordinance will go directly into we're looking to put that directly to some type of fund to divert for drug help or drug abuse type programs. We're not looking to add that to any way to the general fund. We're not looking for this as some type of revenue stream. It's unfair for us to look at it as some type of revenue stream. We want to use 100% of the proceeds to kind of help people who need help. So I kind of want everyone to know.
Can I just offer one thing before you provide your commentary? And I may get a few boos in the crowd for this, but I'm of the mind that unlike Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, certainly we have an opportunity to serve to provide a model piece of legislation for other municipalities to look at. So I encourage everyone to be mindful to look outside of what's already been done and look to how can we innovate on that. Me personally, I'm really for zero tolerance for public smoking because you have a large contingent of folks who don't want. In fact, I met with some students today, ironically enough, from Sci Tech who had asked about what can they do to curb smoking at the bus station, Market Square, because that's essentially where they have to. That's their bus stop. So you'll likely have the same thing, and to me, I feel that it's almost disrespectful for folks to be out and out and about and smoking. The other thing as well, there's one of the chief issues that the city of Philadelphia said that they've had since since enacting their ordinance was that it's almost an attitude or the misconception that marijuana is legalized in the city and people under act accordingly. And as well in the state of Washington, one of their biggest issues is folks driving impaired while under marijuana. So when you add that component with folks smoking out in the public, you create the potential for that. So I'm all for folks, in their own homes or someone else's private residence like that. But let's keep in mind that also that there still needs to be some reasonable deterrence.
I have a question. If you have a question, we're going to kind of try to keep. Does anyone else on the panel have anything to say before I move on to the next? Go ahead.
I'll say one thing just quickly. I think Harrisburg did try to be consciously different than Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And we are trying to strike something of a balance in our proposal, and there are some significant differences that we should talk about and get feedback on. That's the whole point. So we do have a higher fine structure. It does escalate, and the idea there was you need to set the fine at some level that is not a slap on the wrist, that doesn't sort of verge into legalization, which we can't do. But you don't want the fine to be so high that it's counterproductive. So we do have a community service provision in the bill, and if people can't pay the fine, we certainly would want to see an opportunity to do community service. Also, we don't want the proceeds of the fine to go to anything other than back into treatment. That's very important. So I think we can have a discussion about what is the right level of the fine, but we are trying to have the fine have an impact. And then also, differently, we do, maybe it shouldn't be 3 strikes, maybe it should be 4 strikes, maybe it should be 5 strikes, but there should be a point where you can't just repeatedly violate the law, and because that is the law. Now we can change the law on the state level, but that is the current law. Without it reverting back, I think, to a misdemeanor. So I think we should talk about those, and I think people can disagree on where that line is, but we tried to draw that line, and that is different than what happened in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh.
Thank you. All right, go ahead.
My name is Alex Domingos. I'm a member of the Stops Today Harrisburg, a local community activist organization, hoping to further accountability. That's right. All right. Hoping to further accountability between the police and communities and further transparency. We'd like to, currently we're coming out against a PA Senate bill that would kind of go against those, PA Senate Bill 1061. That's another conversation. Today, we want to kind of give support to this, the idea of where we're going. However, the fines are an area of concern. I'm glad you mentioned that you wanted it to go towards some type of treatment. We would just urge that none of this money goes to any type of general fund. We saw in Ferguson, Missouri, kind of petty crimes like this. They were using it to fund their government and essentially targeting people. And we saw already the racial disparities and who was already being targeted. So we just want to prevent that. And also, we would just urge for a completely nominal fine, if anything, or if we're talking about community service, why don't we just skip the fines and just have them do community service? That way, people that can't afford the fines, I know you're saying that they may be able to do community service, but the court system's not. Sometimes you can't pay your fines, you end up in the same problem we're trying to avoid in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Gristo, and I have been resident of the city of Harrisburg for 45 years. I'm presently reside in Pembroke. As an inner city minister, I see the menace that marijuana has presented on society. And I've been ministered in the inner city since the 1980s as a young man, and I've seen firsthand the destruction. I see people here that were actually hoping to legalize marijuana. I'd like for you to come with me to the inner city and see the destruction it does, and then decide if you want to legalize the marijuana. Drivers on marijuana have diminished driving skills. They lack focus, and also they have a decreased ability to track moving objects. This is true, and this will result in more accidents with injuries and fatalities. Research proves that marijuana is addictive. Many individuals who enter treatment many who have had gone in for treatment have not undergone for treatment of any other drug except strictly for marijuana. Also, it's interesting to note that the late Whitney Houston, they found in her room drugs, including marijuana.
I'm sorry. I would just ask that we can just be respectful to everyone as they share their opinion. We just have to. The whole point of the meeting is, there are going to be people who are going to be for, there are going to be people who are going to be against. I think it's our job to respect everyone's opinion. So if you guys can hold your comments and snickering, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, the Bible says this, that everyone does what is right in their own eyes, but the ends of those ways are death.
Amen.
Hold on. The chief's gonna make a comment.
If I
real
could
quick.
just comment. The city of Harrisburg, the mayor and myself, city council, the DA's office, we're not trying to legalize this, but we're not ignorant to the fact that we have a problem with kids smoking weed. You can do one or two things. You can turn your back and act like, it is no problem, or you can enact something to help them. The final cause is open for conversation. The city of Harrisburg do not want to benefit from charging anybody. The money will go back into a fund for drug and alcohol treatment. We're not trying to profit from this. So I hope we can put that there to rest. If you look at the overall picture, what the young man just said, well, alcohol does the same thing. That's the worst drug that I've ever seen. Okay? That's the worst drug that I've ever seen. And then, but if you try to ban alcohol, you can really have a fight here. Yeah.
They already tried it. We did it once.
If you look at us trying to legalize the marijuana, we're not trying to do that there, but you look at the heroin epidemic. We came out with a life-saving drug, and now you got more people than ever doing heroin because we got this a life-saving drug. So, as I said earlier, you pick your poison. What do you want to do here? Do you want to help people? Do you want to help them through a problem? Or do you want to turn your back like we've done for so many years and not do anything? So,
I just want to jump in on one thing, and I think regardless of what happens here, and I think most of us all agree on this, driving under the influence of marijuana, it does not change at all. That is still a crime, just like driving under the influence of alcohol is. So, that's, as was mentioned, certainly a problem. Driving under the influence of marijuana, as is driving under the influence of alcohol, more of a problem. But this would not change. If someone chooses to smoke and get caught while driving under the influence of marijuana, they'll face those DUI penalties.
Yes, good evening. My name is Lionel Gonzalez, and I am a member of the school board. And I wonder how it's ordinary, like a 30 days in prison, and then depends the amount of marijuana the person carries, is going to motivate the drug dealer to look for many people then to sell marijuana. Then I worry about the school children too, because they will go around those drugs just for a little amount, and that bothers me a lot too. Also, for medical reason, I am a veteran. I was wounded in Vietnam in 1968, and I get medication, and some people ask me personally to buy some, which is for my PTSD. Some of them, they asked me, I said, listen, I don't fool with the VA. Okay, I'm a very serious person. And I don't want is the children at the school, a child at the school, which is getting marijuana for medication, come a street person, oh, I give you so much, and then get some more. And, I worry because, like the pastor said, bad influence spread around, like in the book of Job. And I don't want that to happen to my student in the school. And I have a great confidence in the mayor and the chief and the district attorney. Thank you.
I just want to say, you know, that part of the proceeds from this here will go into the schools. We're trying to partner with the schools because the ultimate outcome of this here legislation is to do away with marijuana or people who want to try marijuana. It's all about educating the youth. So we'll be inside the schools educating kids, you know, don't even try it, don't even do it. You know, but like right now, you know, like we have a generation of people who are doing it. So we're reaching out to them, trying to help them too. But the ultimate goal is not have anybody do it. That's the idealistic view. The realistic view is that you can't stop it.
And I would comment that one thing to keep in mind is the youth, and whether we like it or not, it's happening already. So what is happening is, you know, youth are being caught smoking marijuana, and at times they are being charged. And when they are charged, you know, they are already at an early age developing a criminal record, which is hindering them from moving forward in life. So I think that's the reality that the chief is referring to. So we're trying to attack this problem right from the door and make sure that that small mistake is not a permanent lasting effect on their life. So just by, you know, participating in that activity, they need to understand, like us as adults, we can sit here and we can evaluate the consequences of if we choose to smoke marijuana or do not choose to smoke marijuana. But as kids, you know, they need to understand, you know, the parameters of what this can possibly do to your life if you're caught. You see what I'm saying? So we have to make sure that not only we have some type of deterrent for our children, but make sure they understand the confines of society that we live in right now. Whether we like it or not, it is the law. And until the law changes, you know, we have to protect our youth from falling within the criminal system. So I just want to point that out.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I got you.
Oh, boy.
Good evening. My name is Mr. Boyd. I'd like to say congratulations for this meeting this evening. And I'd like to tell that city of Harrisburg, the city I've been born in, well, you listened this time, didn't you? You listened. Because smoking marijuana is a #1 drug knocking on the door. It is the beginning of death and destruction. That's right. It is the beginning of death and destruction. I'm the one, remember, that walks on 13th and Market, Cuban Alley, going into neighborhoods of this city, watching people smoking crack, doing drugs and saying and holding a woman's arm and telling her, excuse me, you can do better than that. So I commend my city, and I commend when people really say this, we are going to help. But when people say we can't stop this, if you say you can't stop it, then you just might as well get up from the chair and leave. Because our city, we need to stop thinking that we are in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Reading, Pennsylvania. We have problems, social problems within this great city that we can solve ourselves. How many years do I have to keep telling people the same story? This is a great city. This is one of the greatest cities on the East Coast. We know what to do. But the only thing that what we refuse to do is do it. So once again, I commend the politicians, so to speak, once again, and here I am once again saying to the populace of this great city and the politicians, will you walk with me one evening?
Yes.
Would you walk with me
Yes.
one evening?
Yes.
And I'll show you part of this city that you thought that you would have never seen. And if you don't believe that, ask Patty Kim. Thank you very much.
Hey, what's up? I'm Chris Sennick. World Peace Activist, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Against war. There you go. Okay, so. All right. While this legislation is good, I appreciate all the effort that you guys are putting into it. I would like to see the fines dropped considerably because we're not making $15 an hour, so that's going to be 10 hours of labor for one fine. I would also like to remind the public it's like, this isn't just a movement that encompasses the local law. At the local level, we have to think continually bigger, and Bernie Sanders did just introduce a bill to legalize completely. So we should take note of that, and possibly if we run into barriers at the local level with law writing, we should write to senators that are in support of better policies to implement in our own town. So we can't do it alone. So just do want to say, like, people should do more research. Medical marijuana was just illegally imported into Camp Hill and cured some guy's cancer. Randy from Triple R Guitar. So, like, there's a lot to look into. And it's up to you to change everything. Thanks.
And just real quick, we do have surveys. I don't want people to leave with the survey because that kind of defeats the purpose. So if you did fill out a survey, can you just please place it on the table? Joyce is back there. If you put your hands up, Joyce. She's by the table. You can just put it back there, and I will collect that. But we really, really would appreciate your written comments. Thank you.
Real quick. To the last two speakers, the one aspect of the current version of the bill that I certainly agree with is that community service component. I have both the benefit and unfortunate situation of working with the state legislature. So as you guys know, the 2015-16 budget hasn't been fully passed yet. And the upcoming budgetary cycle is not looking promising either. So certainly for a lot of you folks that are either that work for nonprofits or have your own or faith-based initiatives, that community service piece, certainly personnel becomes an issue. You have to lay folks off. So certainly in the event we do not have the upcoming budget isn't finalized, certainly the one thing that I would encourage the mayor as well as council is to compile a list of those local community organizations that can certainly benefit from that community service piece. So that's certainly a big piece there. The other part too, I know that the theme was that it's already happening, we can't stop it. I would say probably about 2 weeks ago, our caucus met with he's the former deputy commissioner of Philadelphia Police Department, and what they spearheaded since 2012 is their school diversionary program. One of the top offenses that they say that occur within the confines of the school setting is the possession of marijuana. So, obviously Philadelphia being a larger school district, the numbers are higher, but that was one of the highest offenses there. So certainly that wasn't the case when I was in school, but that is definitely the trend now. So the numbers do reflect that certainly this is what our young people is the activities that they're engaging in. So certainly that fund that goes towards treatment and education would be beneficial. So just wanted to throw those two things out.
Anybody else in the panel?
Hello, my name is Daryl Hick, lifelong resident in Susquehanna Valley. The most harmful thing about marijuana is the consequences you're given by the legal system for having it. Guess what? People I know who are affected by these ancient laws are good people, and they are community members who give back to society already because that's what's in them. My life was knocked off course by the laws surrounding marijuana. Not on course, off course. And I'm also an MS patient. It helps me a lot. Do you know what happens with MS? The white blood cells think that the myelin in my brain is an invader, and it strips it off. And that causes electrical storms. And that causes extreme pain sometimes, and numbness. And sometimes it's just annoying. But the cannabis helps. I don't deserve to be stopped by a police officer, my belongings rifled through, thrown in the back of a cruiser, and my day disrupted because I happen to have a little bag in my pocket that's hardly distinguishable from oregano. We're not talking about hard drugs here, people. Cocaine and heroin are a completely different topic. Thank you for the time so much.
Thank you. How are you?
We live in the greatest country in the world.
Yes.
We have the greatest justice system in the world.
Yes.
Somehow, Pennsylvania, this morning I saw on World News today, we have 50,000 people as prisoners. And we have 30,000 parolees. Soon the number will reach 100,000. And that's when America starts not looking so great. And that's when America starts feeling like poor people are disadvantaged and have to resort to crimes to succeed because their license is taken away from a small amount of marijuana. There's a lot of young people impacted by this that don't have a license for a certain amount of time, can't find a job, and they resort, and it just perpetuates more crime. You know, and that's when my great country just starts looking like capitalist pigs. Which, I've read the Bible. I think that really is the biggest concern, honestly, is money. And I do think the fines are too much, especially because poor people are going to be impacted by this. I feel like the 3-strike rule can get replaced just simply by making it a summary offense, period. Just bringing us down to a summary offense, fine people all forever. That way, at least it doesn't look like the city is trying to make money and trying to get like the money from the county's hands, because I believe the county has always benefited from a lot of the crimes that happen in the city. And I just see it as like, I'm not even talking about the PTSD that happens when you get confronted by police, just on that first time. If you do make it to DCP, that the PTSD from that in itself could traumatize you forever, and nobody really deserves any of that. So I believe that for all the things that aren't liked about the proposed bill, there are answers that aren't that realistic, and I believe that bringing it to a traffic offense, in my opinion, would help a lot.
Thank you. I'll put it down. Okay.
My name is Jamisha White. So I'm from Harrisburg, and I just want to say I smoke weed. I'm coming from my younger.
It's okay. What are you doing? It's okay.
So from my younger from my younger folks, right? I don't want them to smoke weed. I started smoking weed at the age of 13. That gateway drug, it hindered my life on all levels. So I don't want my younger generation behind me to smoke weed. I want them to say no to drugs. Yeah, cause my dreams, my goals, my values, my morals was shattered due to weed. You know what I mean? I used to play basketball. I still do, and stuff like that. So, like, I got caught smoking weed. My background. I can't get a job due to weed. You see what I'm saying? So, that small amount of marijuana is big. You know what I mean? I'm paying for it on all levels. So, like, we can try to stop everything, right? But the kids, they're gonna do what they want to do. You know what I mean? So, community service, give them that. If they get caught smoking weed, you know what I mean? Don't put them in jail. If they parents choose to pay the fines, then go ahead. You know what I mean? But accountability, right? They gonna have to stand up. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, like, I was a kid once, and my life started with weed. You know what I mean? And it shattered my dreams on all levels. You know what I mean? So, like, if y'all do decide to legalize it, go ahead. But don't though. You know what I mean? Because as youth, all we do is smoke weed in our spare time. In our spare time. You know what I mean? That's what we do. So whatever. You know what I mean? I tell my younger people, don't smoke weed. You know what I mean? But if you do, it's consequences that you gonna have to obtain. So that's your choice. You know what I mean? It's like real heinous on all levels. You know what I mean? But we make decisions for ourselves. You know what I mean? And I remember going to when Kimber was alive and stuff like that. I remember us going to Choice gas station and just getting ready to get high. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, all of our grades was right, in spite of what we did and stuff like that. All right.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I apologize because I'm super nervous,
You're
but
okay.
sorry. I'm gonna ask you guys a question and lay some information out there, and then I'm kind of looking at how you're gonna handle the situation if and when this all goes through. With the popularity of CBD oil popping up on the market, and it's illegal to purchase or distribute these oils in Pennsylvania, obviously you guys agree, correct? It's illegal to distribute CBD oil, medicinal marijuana, right? Okay. So the question that I'm then posing to you guys is that with companies like Charlotte's Web that are out there that have these oils available, are you then going to include the CBD oils in the decriminalization, or how does that actually go? Since it does have the 3% of THC, it's considered illegal. So would it be included in the decriminalization?
One, on the state level, they are poised to pass something, whatever that final rendition is. You know, that's up to debate, but certainly they're, with the exception of maybe Speaker Terzai, there does seem to be the political will to do that, and Senate Bill 3 will receive second consideration on Monday, and it is in the House, so that is poised to pass. Like I said, whatever the final version is.
And I apologize because I'm like I said.
So I'm saying that deals with medical marijuana. My apologies. That deals with medicinal marijuana. So we're kind of moving in the right direction statewide relative to that.
But then, I mean, like, so in this situation where somebody doesn't necessarily have that prescription and they have the oils, because the THC level's at 3%, would then it be included in the decriminalization is basically where my question would be. Would the oils then be included in decriminalization?
The current
Because it
version,
only
no,
says,
I'll let
I think the way this bill is written, it just covers.
just hash and it was.
It will be covered under the state legislation that's going to pass. You know, we'll worry about, you don't have to worry about the decrim. I mean, you'll be covered.
Because it'll all be covered under the
CBD
oils,
oils,
period.
and it's not 3% THC, it's way lower than that.
It's going down to
CBD
1%,
oils,
yep.
but yeah.
That's what I was just
So
checking.
that'll be covered under state law.
You would still probably need a prescription.
Or
Right.
recommendation.
Or recommendation.
Or recommendation, yeah, not necessarily.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
That's a whole different. Thank you so much. No, yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
clarifying.
Hello. First off, I just want to thank the city and everybody else for coming out and having this meeting and breaking the social taboo of being afraid to talk about this subject. For years, nobody even wanted to discuss this or give it the slightest word. So it's really nice to see everybody out here opposed or for it. And I just want to say, Harrisburg has some of the most wonderful officers that I've met as far as other cities and cops I've dealt with. They have been respectful, they treat people pretty well compared to everywhere else, and I think one of the biggest problems with illegalization of cannabis is that it drives people away from the police. The police are supposed to be there to help you. They're supposed to be there if somebody's breaking into your house. You don't want to be afraid to call because your house is being robbed, to have a cop come and charge you for a little bag of weed in your drawer. That's not what the police are for, and it drives people away from the police force, and it gives the people a bad image of the people that are supposed to be there to help them. And I think that's one of the biggest issues of this whole topic, that it's really driving people away from the law, and it's driving people away from the police, and that's not what should be going on here. And everybody wants to talk about marijuana as this gateway drug, and I'm afraid of marijuana because once you start letting it out, once it's decriminalized and legal, well, what do you call alcohol and tobacco? Those things are legal. Alcohol is at least 10 times worse than cannabis ever has. You know, drunk drivers have been way more of a problem on the road than high drivers. And I'm not saying anybody should ever be allowed to drive high, but I'm just saying it's way more of a problem with alcohol, yet that's legal. You can get drunk on the weekends. Nobody seems to have a problem with that. You don't get drug tested for alcohol. You know, I'm not much of a public speaker here, but I just think it's a really big point to address that people need to, big point to address. You know, I seen Randy from Camp Hill, the cannabis oils saved him from cancer. You know, he basically treated himself with these oils. And by doing so, he broke the law. And that just goes to show what an unjust law this is when the cure for cancer is literally illegal.
Yep.
So that's one thing that we really need to think about is there are some implications. And yeah, I'm for all legalization, but I think this is a very prominent first step that we need to decriminalize and we need to allow these things to pass. And everybody wants to say gateway drug, gateway drug. Look at alcohol. You can drink, if you're gonna drink, you're gonna do that. But I think marijuana is a bigger gateway because of the crimes that it has. You know, you give somebody this whole record and everything, and they can't get a job. So what do? They start slinging weed. And then what do they do when they're slinging weed? They start slinging cocaine, they start slinging heroin. And then you have this whole chain of crime led from this initial arrest and a record that they got for smoking a dried flower. And that's the biggest thing. It is the gateway to other crime. It takes away people's record, their ability to work. One thing that needs to be addressed is the whole license thing with PennDOT. That I think you can't take people's licenses for small amounts of marijuana, because once you start taking people's licenses for stuff like that, then you take their ability to work. Just like these criminal records, they just commit these people to lives of crime, and people who are perfectly normal people, they get caught with a little bag of dried flowers, and then all of a sudden, they commit a life of crime because they go to jail, they can't get a job. You know how many jobs give you a background check? So I think that's the most important thing, and that's the biggest gateway here, because it all starts somewhere. And if this was not treated like a Schedule I drug, which heroin and other drugs that have killed people, if this harmless drug that has never killed anybody wasn't treated like that, you wouldn't have so many people getting into other drugs and committing other crimes. That is why it's a gateway drug. That is the cause behind all this, and we need to focus on the cause, not the effect. This zero tolerance for cannabis altogether is not helping anybody. It's driving people from the police who are supposed to be there to protect them. It's driving people away from good jobs and actually working and turning them into drug dealers. This is wrong, and it's hurting society, and people need to talk about this and need to change the rules on how this all works. So, thank you for your time.
Go ahead. I want to pass the mic to Brandon. Go ahead, Chief.
Just a comment off what the young man said. You know, I'd like to congratulate the City Council President, Mr. Johnson, my public chairperson, the DA, and the mayor, because we're here because we realize that we have to think outside the box. We realize that we have to make changes. You know, this is a huge step, you know, that is taking place right now. You know, a lot of other people had the same opportunity, but they didn't take it. You know, marijuana for medical purpose, I will support you 150%. For those that want to use for your own personal use, I'm against any kind of drug, period, but I'm not going to turn my back to say that we don't have a problem, just like the other people here won't turn their back on it. You know, so like this is a big step for us. We're thinking outside the box, and everything, you know, that we take in here, we're here to listen to you, your concerns. And what I'm hearing right now, you know, is that the fines are too high. We can work with that. You know, we have to tailor our ordinance, you know, to fit Harrisburg's needs. It's not it's not something that we can do overnight, but we're having a real conversation. We'll have another real conversation later on, you know, and hopefully, you know, things will work out. But in no way are we trying to legalize marijuana. I'll say it again. We're not trying to legalize marijuana whatsoever. We just realize that something else has to be done because what is being done so far is not working.
And forgive me, I don't see if you, the last speaker, if you're still here. Relative to the licenses, I know certainly that's an issue. Like I said, in this particular instance, I think this would serve as a better deterrent than the 3 strikes component. But and this is part of the reason why I asked City Council as well as the mayor to be involved, because there's some things that can be done on the state level too. So one of the things that we are currently working on is the eligibility requirements for those to get probationary licenses, occupational licenses, because right now the way it's set up is you pretty much have to have like 5+ years suspension. So we're trying to reduce it because the ultimate goal is, you know, and they call it the colloquial term for it is the bread and butter license. So essentially to allow people to go to and from work, but still be able to serve under suspension. So that's something that we're working with PennDOT on, as well as when the actual suspension begins tolling for anyone who in here whose license has been suspended at some point in time. They have what the current process is you actually have to send in written acknowledgement saying that that you're acknowledging that your license is suspended, and until which time that they receive that, your actual suspension doesn't begin. So our office has received a number of complaints, or some of them may have been founded or unfounded, where someone said, hey, well, I sent my acknowledgement in 3 years ago, and I thought my license was, my suspension ended today. There's really no way to substantiate that because you don't do it via email, you send it through snail mail. So the one thing we're working on is to get rid of that acknowledgement part altogether, because the court, from the time someone's convicted, they send that record to PennDOT, and from there it should begin tolling. So in short, just saying that we are working on the state level to kind of address those issues to where someone, even if they are disobeying the law, certainly their livelihood isn't affected adversely.
That's the most important thing in all of this is taking people's livelihoods and their ability to work, because that's what leads to the cycle of crimes. That's what ties up our, and you mentioned the number of arrests that happened for marijuana, but you think about all the other arrests and how many of these started with the marijuana record. Because once these things snowball out of control, people end up in a situation where the only thing they can do to support their families is to turn to this life of crime. And that's the most important thing, to stop at the root of the cause than to just try and hit people with a zero tolerance and scare them out of doing things in the first place. It's to really try and address the problem from where it starts and actually get somewhere with it that way and keep people from falling into the cycle of crime where they're dealing drugs and all that other bad stuff.
I'd like to address everyone's concerns about children. I'm not here to argue that marijuana is not harmful, but what people don't understand is, why do you think marijuana is available for use to have? Because drug dealers do not differentiate between a 16-year-old and a 25-year-old. It is still illegal to sell drugs to a minor and an adult either way. By having it illegal, you create the source for use to get marijuana. If it was regulated and sold, distributors have licenses that you can take away. Drug dealers mostly have criminal records, and they have mainly nothing to lose or no other source of income. You make it a regulated industry, and that way you take the ability, because a licensed distributor will not sell to someone who's under 18 or whatever the provision in the bill will be. You make it that way, it takes away the ability for kids to get drugs, and that's what we want. We don't want youth to start. You take away the ability for them to get weed. If you do think it is a gateway drug, take away the ability for them to start. If it's legal and regulated, then they can't get their hands on it. It's harder to get. And that's why alcohol and even cigarettes are harder for minors to get than marijuana. Why do you think it's so prevalent? Because it's illegal. And that's all I have to say about it. It's just, when you're talking about thinking outside the box, your good intentions, and you do have good intentions in making marijuana illegal. It is harmful, for sure. People do drive on it, and it is dangerous. But the consequences of the way it's set up are more severe than what the alternative is. So, thank you.
And just to kind of just to kind of keep us in the provisions of what we can do. One thing we can't legalize it, or we can't we don't have that power as this governing body. So I don't want us to kind of veer off of to a land that we really can't do anything about. So if we can kind of bring it back home and focus on the actual legislation and the parameters of what we can do. And I think that's why there's that notion of speaking about the youth. We can't make it legal to have it regulated and sold by, dispensaries, so to keep it out of the hands of youth. There are, in the confines that we're living in, youth are getting it from drug dealers because it's still considered illegal. We can't do anything about it as this council. So if we can just kind of keep it to what we can do as a council to make it work for Harrisburg, I think that would be very, very beneficial. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Schubert. I'm with This Stops Today, Harrisburg, Black Lives Matter. And just driving back home to this legislation today, I mean, I don't want to repeat everything that we already heard. I do agree that the fines are too high. I'm going to suggest something a little wacky. And maybe the first offense you consider that maybe people should just do the volunteer work, the first offense, and then escalate towards the fines. But I'd also really like to see it defined what a public safety special reserve fund is, because we've heard out loud spoken here tonight that it's going to go towards education, towards helping with people who might be experiencing minors, drug problems, but I want it defined. I want it written. That's all.
And one thing I had a conversation with the mayor, and we were this legislation kind of formed as the framework. And one thing I did mention in terms of transparency, exactly saying where the dollars are going to. And our budget is open to public record, so you guys, the public, is able to keep track of it. But there's no type of way, as long as I'm up here and as long as the rest of my colleagues are up here, that we're in any form or shape are going to use this money to divert for anything but the sole purpose of what we're trying to do. So we will clearly, when it comes time to drafting the final legislation, we will clearly define it. If anyone would like to, our budget is posted online. If anyone wants any updates, we're going to be as transparent about it as possible. 100% transparent. I'm not even going to say as possible, but we're going to let everyone know exactly what's going on.
Hi, my name is Ryan Gordon, and I'm a criminology student at the Indiana University of Pennsylvania. I'd just like to say for the start that I am for the decriminalization and legalization of marijuana. But I do have a couple of questions about the provisions. My first question is that it's been brought up a couple times that there's a big difference between public smoking marijuana and private smoking marijuana. How does that relate to the public and private smoking of, say, cigarettes?
Wow, just speaking in terms of, and then I'll let anyone else answer it. So within our ordinance, from my understanding of reading, it really doesn't segregate whether if it's public, it doesn't address public smoking at all. It just addresses possession of marijuana. So it doesn't, there's no really comparison right now between publicly smoking marijuana or publicly smoking cigarette. It really it's really defined of talking about possession of marijuana.
The other question I have is that since it is a flat fine, no matter who the person is, do you think that this provision will benefit the rich more than it will the poor? Because if you're making minimum wage, this fine is going to have a much larger impact on you than if you're making $100,000 a year and you have a steady job.
Can I respond to that? And one of the proposed, and we've shared some ideas with the mayor's office and with council as well. One of the proposed provisions in line with the fines was if, because it'll be our magistrates or DJs, if they can determine if someone is deemed indigent or unable to pay, and they can do that in a number of ways, check whether someone's employed or not. So certainly determining whether or not someone has the ability to pay or if they're indigent, certainly that should be something that should be considered. So I'm with you on that.
So you would leave it to the judge's discretion to decide the amount of the fine?
Well, the judge, I mean,
No,
it's always going to be left, I guess, from my understanding, if there's a different interpretation, that it will be left to our DJs to, I guess, follow through with the citations that are issued by our police department.
Yeah, in terms of what that standard is for determining whether someone's indigent or not, yeah, that probably would be more discretionary. But I never, just kind of put myself in the shoes of the DJ. Certainly, the first thing I would look at is whether someone's employed and where are you employed at, how much you're making. If someone's telling me that they're working a low-wage job, then I would kind of presume for pretty much most of those cases. That they would arrive at a reasonable decision, but that's just me though.
Is that type of discretion currently being used with the laws that are currently in play?
Now you're getting philosophical on me.
Well, you're all the experts on it.
No. In the legislation that I have pulled up in the city of Philadelphia and the city of Pittsburgh, if you're under the age of 18, it's a $25 civil fine, and if you're above the age of 18, it's $100, and that's true in the city of Philadelphia and the city of Pittsburgh in both of their pieces of legislation.
Yeah, and I think one thing to point out too, and I know you have it in front of you right now, is the significant difference between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and Harrisburg is Philadelphia is a city and a county, and I think one thing they're able to do, they have a civil court where they actually process all their cases through. So all the cases that will be processed in Pittsburgh and all the cases that will be processed in Harrisburg and Dauphin County goes through actually it will still go through the same system as our criminal system, right? But it's like going to court for like a traffic citation, because you still have the right to, once you receive the citation, to plead not guilty, just like with any other citation you receive. So that process will be handled by your local DJ.
Well, thank you very much. I have a great respect for what you're all doing, and I would really like to see Harrisburg lead the country in these type of decriminalization laws.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My name is Butts, Louis Butts. I'm a committee man for Ward 3 in Harrisburg. I want to thank our representatives, Chief, Mayor, DA, and also Cornelius. You're doing a fantastic job. And I'm proud of where we're going with this, because it shows it's an opening the door to bringing back what a village is all about. I think when we set some fail-safes regards to this bill, regards to the number of people getting arrested, the imbalance in the black men getting arrested, it helps to save that, and that's what we're trying to protect. We're trying to protect our people, and thank you for starting it out. But texting, alcoholism, all that stuff, texting is one of the biggest driving situations we have today. According to the driver, according to PennDOT, texting is crazy. Yeah. Everybody's breaking the law. Be honest, everybody's doing it. And everybody, this is a meeting for the smokers. So I don't even know why they talk about non-smoking situations, because we're talking about people that smoke. So leave this for the smokers. We like freedom. Harrisburg is a village. We're going to take care of ourselves, but we want our people to be happy to do what they feel as though that they like to do. We're 48,000. We're little. We're little. We're a village. We know everybody. If we can find them, and set up a police mentoring system or something that the kids can get more involved in, a youth police academy. When they get in trouble, they can take a youth court where they have to go in front of the youth court and the good kids they can smoke. How dare you?
Yes.
Something like that. We're making an experience that won't send them into the imperial Neverland like they almost took me to the vortex. But I'm back. That PennDOT stuff, that PennDOT stuff got to stop. I mean, it's serious, man. It ain't funny. It is not funny. You get caught up in that driving under suspension and then 3 times and then, come on, it's a lot. Then you can't get a job. I've been through it. I know it. I live in the city. I grew up in the city all my life. I got the story. And this is a ring of freedom that we need for our people in our area to live peacefully. Everybody ain't gonna be smoking. But for the people that do, they don't be hounded. This is their home. We gotta feel like home. It's not a lot of people. We don't have a lot of, I got cousins. I got a lot of cousins. I got a lot of people. And it's for my people. It's looking after us. And that perpetuates officer friendly. So we can talk to them, and we if they send them with the police, they do something, y'all be with the police for a minute. Maybe you'll turn out to be like the police from something like that. So you don't know how they get the wake up call. You don't know when the light goes off in their head. But we ain't got to be the ones to send them to somewhere that they can't even, or we can't protect them. I just love y'all all the better. You just keep on doing what y'all doing, because I got my own vices, but it ain't that. I'm just saying.
I
Hello, my name is Laszlo Juhas, and I'm a hemp activist. I work in hemp foods. I think we've lost sight as to why cannabis was made illegal in the first place, and that's mostly for industrial implications. DuPont was making DuPont and Henry Anslinger and these gentlemen were demonizing a plant which has been proven across the world through many studies, but our own, because we have it as a class 1, schedule 1 narcotic, that it's only beneficial to humanity. We have 20,000 years of known coevolution, physiological coevolution with cannabis, namely that cannabinoids can be found in breast milk. Cannabinoids can be found when you run and have runner's high. You release that in your brain. So I think we should really reconsider why we're demonizing the plant in the first place. And it is important to safeguard children, especially since our frontal lobes are developing until we're 24, 25. But I think we're overstepping it by demonizing people in general for using a plant that benefits their health, benefits their well-being. I mean, the plant itself is the only food source on the planet that you can eat and nutritionally thrive from. It has all the essential amino acids plus the 2 you stop producing after the age of 24. So I think, hemp is good all around. I mean, we should separate the THC, the CBD.
Agreed.
But it is a whole plant solution, and we have to pursue that and research that and get that available to the public.
Thank you. So I'm gonna, we have a comment he can't stand, and I'm gonna take, is there any more comments over here? Just one, I'm gonna take it to him and I'll bring it back to you, and then I'm gonna leave it open for closing remarks. Once again, we do have a survey. Please don't leave with the survey, because then we don't know what you're thinking. So if you please leave the survey right at that table, all myself and all of my council members and the mayor and everyone who's working to make this legislation a good legislation for Harrisburg will take a look at it and bring it back to the table for our next discussion on March 24th at our VMC building, our Public Works Facility on Paxton Street. What's the address of that? 1820 Paxton Street, March 24th at 5:30. Old Brenner's Building.
Excuse me for not being able to stand, but I'm one of those ones that suffer with a chronic illness called sickle cell disease. And, I listened to everybody's comments, and I was trying not to say anything. But, gravitating with our young people, the reason why they're smoking is because there's underlying issues. And until those underlying issues are confronted, we're going to continue to find that they're smoking more and more, and then it leads to something else now. But I'm going to tell you the truth. Now, the gateway drug is pharmaceutical drugs. I've been taking pharmaceutical drugs since I came in the world. I'm on all types of opiates. So, if we're gonna be beating up on anybody, how about the pharmaceutical companies?
Yeah.
Because they're the ones getting rich, and they're destroying half of our internal organs. And so, I'm with medical marijuana, but I deal with a population of sickle cell people who are young, who are losing their limbs because the oxygen is not flowing either one way, or they're having strokes if it's not flowing up toward their brain. So, I'm understanding what's going on with our young people, and as a community leader, I see what's going on a daily basis. Even when the kids are going to school, up to the high school, early in the morning, they're smoking a blunt before they go and get into the high school. So you smell it, because they sure don't spray perfume or cologne on them when they get here. So there's a whole lot that goes with this. And we need to pay attention and try to find out what these underlying issues are and try to give them some support.
Agreed.
Okay, just clarification, how the strikes work. Those strikes stick with you, even if the gap between the first and the second gap is, say, 10 years? Do they stick?
When it's written out, yeah.
Okay, that was it.
Yeah. So that's that's a very, very good point that he pointed out, and that was something that I also discussed with the mayor as well, that we wanted to kind of get public input as well, because we all especially I'm not gonna. I know we're in presidential times, but I know a president has come out and said about this 3 strikes program before in the 90s and how that has affected a lot of neighborhood disproportionately. So one thing to take a look at is how exactly are we going to be if we go that route, how are we going to implement it, what are the time frame is implemented. If I get a strike when I'm 18, do I have to still worry when I'm 42? How is it tracked? So that's something that's really up for discussion, and that's why I kind of put that question out on the survey as well, to kind of get you guys' feedback on that. But that, like the mayor said it from the very, very beginning, this was a legislation that just kind of built like the framework, and that was definitely one of the open areas where we were looking for public input to kind of see if that's something that works for Harrisburg or something that doesn't work for Harrisburg. But that was a very, very good point that he pointed out towards the end of the conversation. Yep, you got, yep.
My name's Matthew. I'm an addict.
Welcome.
I consume marijuana on a regular basis.
Welcome, Matthew.
Boo this man. My first comment is that there is not enough people here.
Amen.
For the 9 people that are here. For the 9 people that are here, and the room full of people that are here, to alone ourselves give our opinion and try to make a determination on the laws that affect so many more people, I feel like all of us here should take more steps and ingrain our fingers into the root and the soul of Harrisburg and get out and talk to people and get them here.
Agreed.
Not only on this subject, but for everything.
Agreed.
We're lacking, we don't care enough. A lot of these problems result because we don't interact with the people around us to try to affect and change the environments that we're in. We don't care anymore for some reason, but that wasn't the point. Sorry, that's a side note. The question was, does this board not have any effect in changing decriminalization, or is there just no concern in changing decriminalization of this?
City Council, we do not have any power to supersede the state's law against decriminalizing marijuana within the city of Harrisburg.
Now, is there concern amongst this board to get involved and change those laws? Because I have like a strong feeling that if we just decriminalize this plant, we could spend more time focusing on readjusting penalty laws for people who rape other people, who assault other people, who do serious crimes, who sell heroin, who are like doing things that are way worse than picking up a joint, than selling guns, giving guns, promoting violence. I think as nice as this is, thank you all for coming. It's hugely responsible of every one of us to take on this task and try to decide the fate for so many other people. But at the same time, we could be investing our time in doing something better than talking about a consumable plant that is actually benefiting people on so many other levels.
Thank you.
I just want to say that we are the capital of Pennsylvania, and I can assure you what we do here on the local level is making a difference on the state level. People are watching what we do. We are constrained with what we can do on the local level, but we can lead. And we can not only hopefully lead our state legislators to take up the issue, but also hopefully the rest of the county. If we like what's done here, I think you're going to see it spread from here to the rest of the county, the rest of the region. It'll add additional support for legislative efforts on the Hill. So sometimes we forget that we have a lot of power in Harrisburg by being the capital, and we have a captive audience. So let's remember that what we're doing here is really important.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from my very, very far left to see if any members have any closing comments before we conclude the evening.
I don't have a closing comment, but I'm sitting here and I just have to say something. I'm sorry. You know, the purpose of this bill, and we got a lot of outcry from the residents of the city of Harrisburg because of the fact that when they would be stopped by our Harrisburg City Police or any other cops in the surrounding area, that they would be fined and given a record. And their outcry was, why me, and now can I get a job? What are city council members or the administration of the city of Harrisburg going to do about this? Philadelphia took a step. We were at a conference in Philadelphia. And I said, I'll bring it back to Harrisburg. That was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I brought this bill back to Harrisburg. It didn't move until this year. Now, we don't have all the powers that the legislative have, but we're taking a first step. I mean, this is the first step, and we don't want to address rape, and we don't want to address burglary, and we don't want to address all those other issues that are violent crimes. We're starting, this is a beginning. Amen. This is a beginning. And if you want us to do other things, come to city council. That's right. Let us know what you want us to do. We have no idea. But this is a first step in trying to make sure that those individuals who are stopped for 30 grams or less have an opportunity not to have a record and be able to be employed. So we're not seeing them on the streets selling the drug.
Amen.
Yeah. Thank you. Now, I agree with you. Residents need to come to city council. Let this administration and this council know what it is that you would like us to do. Should we address other issues? Sure. And I think we do a great job where we are. I have a great 7-member council. We have a great mayor who works with us sometimes, and sometimes we don't. I'll be very honest.
We're almost there.
I'm not gonna pull no punches. I'm real honest. You know me. I'm real upfront. We're going to agree to disagree, and that's okay. That's okay. We'll work together. But for the most part, we put our heads together to make sure we do the best job for this city. But in order to do that, if you want other things, then come to city council, because we have legislative meetings, we have committee meetings, we have 4 people, the same people come. Mr. Boyd. That he says we don't walk along the streets, and we do. Mr. Butts, he doesn't come anymore. But he did come. But please, we're asking you, come to this. We're trying to change this city. But we need your help.
Thank you.
That's the me, yo.
I just want to thank Cornelius Johnson for taking his public meetings out into the streets. And for HAC, Harrisburg campus, well, Midtown campus, for allowing us the opportunity to be here and using the room free of charge. And for my other colleagues on the panel, and of course, the people and the members of this community who came out and voiced their opinions. I was taking diligent notes, and your voice was heard today, and I will be implementing those changes.
Thank you.
Again, I want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues. Thank everyone here for coming out to attend. I mean, this is the largest group we've seen in our short term in office at any public meeting. Nice. Again, our meetings, as Council President pointed out, and I They are the second and fourth Tuesday of every month at 6 o'clock down at the City Government Center. We have committee meetings as well, and I know I will take the lead from I will take the banner of my colleague, Councilman Johnson, and take the Public Works meetings on the road as well. I mean, it's good to see the public really engaged in an issue. There's a lot of other significant issues that are facing the city of Harrisburg other than this, so we need your involvement on those as well. We all have email addresses that are readily available on our website, so reach out to us, please. We want to be accessible. We want to take care of the needs of the residents of the city of Harrisburg. So this was a good first step. I look forward to seeing you, and tell a friend, bring a friend to the next meeting at the Public Works facility on the 24th, and we just want to continue to hear the input, and we will take all of this into consideration as we move forward. Thank you.
I'll keep my remarks brief. Echo the sentiments of Councilman Westmer, Majors, as well as Destiny. I also want to thank Councilman Johnson as well as Council President Williams for bringing the issue back and for bringing it to the forefront. The mayor as well for definitely bringing this to the forefront. As you mentioned, we are the capital. I like to see us lead on things, especially the important issues. It hurts me to the core when Lancaster beats us this stuff. I definitely appreciate that. And to the audience as well. Don't just leave it up to the policy wonks up here. We need the smokers to tell us what your experiences are. We need the smokers to share what your experiences are, so we can craft. Smokers, city, but especially even the smokers, because they're the ones that can convey to us what their experiences are. What difficulties they faced when they were stopped. The question was mentioned about, there's underlying issues. What led them to take up the habit to begin with? So we welcome that input too. It's not, just unilaterally. Legislation is not. It shouldn't be unilaterally crafted. We're all stakeholders in this. So as Westburn mentioned, please, bring a friend next time or two. So I'll leave it at that. So thank you.
Harrisburg, we have leadership here on City Council, the Mayor's office, Mr. Marsico, DA's office. We have a great concern here, a great concern that states, that we are concerned for you, or are you concerned for yourself? How can we help you to help yourself? How can we as a whole make Harrisburg a greater city, a better city? I would emphasize, we are not trying to legalize marijuana. Right. We are not trying to do that, dear. If the legislator want to make medical marijuana legal, and you got to go through the proper channels to get it, I'm all for it. I'm all for it because I have read how marijuana helps illnesses. And if you look at what state of Washington is doing in Colorado, they're raking in millions of dollars from that. We are not trying to benefit from the 3-strike rule or anything like that. That rule, that language can be taken out. We can take that out. If it goes from a verbal warning the first time to a smaller fine the second time, so be it, to the third time. But there's a beginning point and a stopping point to everything. Amen. And that's what we have to understand here. My door is always open. Just like City Council, the Mayor's office, the DA's office, you can come and see me anytime. If you want to talk about real problems here, where people like getting guns at, come and see me. I would do something about it. Mr. Boyd said, that he walks these streets. I walk the streets, the alleyways, 3 and 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning. I have more miles on my shoes than anybody in city probably. We need one voice, one vote to keep Harrisburg great. Thank you.
I just want to say something pretty remarkable is happening here in Harrisburg. This is democracy and government in action. This is the way it's supposed to be. You see a lot of unanimity up here as well. Where you've got a police chief, you've got a Republican DA, you've got a Democratic mayor. No, and we're all here. We are all here together because we want to find solutions and we care about what the public thinks. So I want to make it clear that the bill was presented in the spirit of advancing the conversation, and what we're seeing now is the way it's supposed to be. This is incredibly, it's exciting to me. I think it's actually historic for Harrisburg. This is, and I also want to thank Cornelius Johnson because it was his idea. It was his idea to take the committee on the road, and it's great to see in Harrisburg. And I want to thank all of you for coming out and making your voices heard. And I think everybody should go back and resolve to tell people about the next meeting. If you want more people to come, we need your help. We just need your help. And this is a great step for Harrisburg, and let's build on it.
I want to echo what everybody said here. I want to thank Cornelius, council, the mayor, and the chief for putting this together. You know, for those of us that are elected officials, you might not think there's a lot of people here. This is a lot of people for a public meeting. As was said earlier by Council President Williams, we're used to seeing the same 4 or 5 people, whether it's at the city level or the county level. We have our same people that come to the county meetings. Mr. Roxbury's always one of those. But we don't get many, that come on a regular basis. So as the mayor said, it is good when you're working on a bill like this, which is something novel. And I have concerns about this. I have concerns because unlike Philadelphia, where it's a county that implemented this, this will cause disparity within a county, from Harrisburg to the townships to the boroughs outside the county. So that's an issue that brings me concerns. I'm concerned with the issue Brandon rose about the PennDOT suspension, because that's usually one of the biggest issues. And as many of the people talk tonight, the issue of the license suspension is something I think we have to take a hard look at and figure out how to address that. And whether this as a summary citation will still result as a record at some level is something I think hasn't been brought up, but we have to take a hard look at that. Look, ideally, if this were going to take place, it should be done at the state level. This is criminal laws are primarily state laws, and that's where we get our criminal laws from, the state. But as was mentioned before, we've seen the slow progress, whether it's on the budget, medical marijuana, bills like that should have been passed a long time ago. Getting something done, it's not right, and the mayor's right. We do have an advantage being here in the capital city. The General Assembly knows what goes on in this city as opposed to some other places. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming out, commend the administration, the council for the work they're doing, and the police for taking a hard look at this. This isn't easy for the police to say. Anytime you talk about decriminalizing anything in law enforcement, that's a tough thing. And as was said by one of the speakers earlier, at least we're having a conversation about it, and that's what's important here. So thanks for inviting me, Cornelius.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out. I did a lot of work trying to use Facebook, the social media, our local news stations. I know a lot of struggles we have of trying to get the word out is finding that single source that everyone can get the information. So, anytime you guys can give us any type of feedback in terms of how we can best get in contact with you. I know today we collected email addresses, so we're maybe try to use that to send out kind of listserv blogs of when, important things are going on or when we're having a meeting, just so we can get the public more involved. So I'm just going to keep it short and brief. I hope to see you guys at the next meeting, and once again, thank you for coming out.